Hey everybody, this is Matt from Adventurecruiser and welcome back. Today I want to talk about the Kenwood VP8000. The Kenwood VP8000 is a multi-band radio, but it also is a multi-protocol radio. We'll get into that a little bit more. However, just for the sake of an introduction, Kenwood has released a multi-band radio to compete with the Motorola APX8000 and is the predecessor to BK's BKR 9000. All three of these have a lot of similar features. They all do VHF, UHF, 7800 if configured properly. They all do VHF and P25. However, Kenwood is the only one that will also do a second digital protocol. In this case, I have it set up for DMR. Neither of these radios are capable of DMR. The Motorola has been rumored to be coming out with DMR, but I've spoken to a Motorola guy who said, no, I don't see them ever doing that. I've also spoken with BK and they said, well, it has the right hardware. We just need to get the right software and firmware for it. BK, DMR, please. Come on, please. Anyways, let's move on with our comparison. The Kenwood is a beautiful radio. There are a few things that I don't like about it, but a lot of things I absolutely love about it. Let's talk about the dislikes first and get those out of the way. The biggest, it's thick, and it's just kind of funky feeling in the hand, just a little bit. You get used to it really quickly, but at initial appearance, it's got this weird cone thing that's going out this way in both that direction and in this direction. And it just feels kind of like there's empty real estate in here and they could have condensed this a bit more. And that's just based off of balance and feel in the hand. I haven't taken this one apart yet. I'm sure I'll do that eventually. The Kenwood is slightly taller than an 8000. Maybe slightly narrower than an 8000, ever so slightly, but it is considerably thicker than an 8000. When you compare it to a BKR 9000, the 9000 is slimmer for 90% of its body. The last 10% is bowed out to presumably fit in a ring on your belt. Both are flared out at the top, just like the Motorola as well. The BKR is slightly wider and then narrower here as well. I do like the feel of the BKR 9000 better than the feel of the Kenwood VP8000. The top displays on all of these are all pretty good. I would say that the Motorola APX8000 has the smallest real estate, and the BK and the Kenwood are both pretty similar. I do think though that the Kenwood uses the real estate in the top display better than either of these two brands. Could be preference, but in my opinion, BK dropped the ball a little bit when their text is so large that it has to cycle through multiple times for you to be able to read the zone and or channel. Whereas the Kenwood nicely displays the zone and the channel here. The APX typically will flash back and forth depending on how you program it in its CPS. Now let's talk about what I like. I think that this is by far the best DMR radio I have ever used. To give you some context, I use XPR 7550s, XPR 5550s, I believe, and 30 somethings for my work every day. I have never been impressed with their audio, and I thought that was a DMR problem. Turns out it's not, it's a Motorola problem. This radio has the clearest DMR, hands down, I've ever heard. So impressive, in fact, that I'm actually considering keeping the DMR system in place at my company and adding some additional DMR repeaters to expand it, because I'm excited that it wasn't the system, it was the radios that were making it hard to hear. When you order one of these, typically it comes, you can order it from a menu, depending on your vendor. You're gonna pick which band you want, VHF, UHF, 7800. You can delete any of those. Which protocols you want analog, you want, I believe it's nexden for Kenwood. I don't have any experience with that, DMR or P25. So I think you can only pick 2 of those 3. You can pick features like instant replay of incoming audio. You can pick how many channels you want the radio to be capable of. I believe the minimum is 512 and it goes up to 5,000. When I ordered this radio, I basically kitted it all the way up. P25, phase 2, trunking. Phase 1, trunking. All 3 bands, DMR, obviously P25, analog. I do need wideband for some of the old marine frequencies. I don't believe I was able to get front panel programming. I'd have to double check on that. But bottom line is, when you buy all of these licenses for this radio, Kenwood has a special feature where those are more or less assigned to you, not the physical radio. This is unique to radios. Excuse me, within radios, this is unique to Kenwood. If you run this over with a forklift or drop it in the ocean, you can take all of those additional features that you've paid for and they'll roll it over into a new physical radio, and it's a perpetual license. I think that's really cool. And that to me is something that is unique enough that it warrants a second look. If you were to buy a radio from Motorola or BK, in my experience, if something happens to the radio, you're just out of luck. You have wasted that money. The downside to Kenwood and an advantage to APX and BK are that Kenwood's Armada software is licensed. I think I had to pay $500 for a 3 or 5 year license for Armada. Motorola has their APX software free on their website now, and BK Technologies, I believe, is about $150, give or take, and you can either buy it from them or any of their vendors. I don't like licensed software. I don't like subscriptions. I like to buy things and own them. I don't want to have to continue to pay for the luxury of using my stuff. Now, are there updates that come with that? I would imagine so, but I don't know that to be true yet because I've never run updates in my software. Give or take. One of the other things that I've run into that I'm not really excited about is if you have a Kenwood radio that is has a different feature set, let's call it. So I'll give you an example. My other VP8000 has VHF, UHF only, no 7800. I wanted to copy the programming from this radio to that radio. And when I do a drag and drop or a copy paste from specific zones or even channels, it says that there is a channel compatibility mismatch and it won't let me drop it from the radio with more provisions to the radio with fewer. But I can do it the other way. The radio with VHF and UHF only, I can copy and paste into this radio. That's not truly uncommon. The APX 8000 has some issues with that, doing a copy paste, drag and drop, but more with the firmware and the software versions. The BKR 9000, it's really simple to pull from other radios into the 9000, and it is a little bit more complicated to pull from the 9000 to a single band radio if that zone has any out of band frequencies in it. Usually it will turn those back to like a 0 or 400 or some innocuous number. But I really didn't like that I had a solid VHF zone and I couldn't copy it from one radio to the other, not even line by line. That was, I'm sure there will be a workaround, but that wasn't very helpful for me. Armada is advantageous in that the software from Armada will do the VP8000, the VP6000, and I believe it will also do the 600 and 800 version as well. I haven't tried that. I also believe it will do the 7000 version, which is the mobile, and I haven't tried that either yet, but that's my understanding based off of playing with the software. There are some confusing elements of the software. But I will say that when it actually comes to programming the zones, channels, and whether it's P25 conventional or DMR, it is really friendly. If there's an issue, it will pop up a warning. You click on the warning, it takes you to the functional issue. If you needed to change a user or a talk group ID, it will take you there rather than just saying, hey, you got a problem. Motorola kind of does that, and BK doesn't seem to have very many issues, but I would say that Kenwood is the most friendly with that. When it comes to programming the radio, I don't like reading manuals, I really don't, but I found that it was pretty intuitive. It was pretty easy to figure out. I also don't like having only one file. I like saving iterations, and I think that Armada was not the easiest to try and find ways. It wasn't intuitive. It didn't say save a copy as. It says, do you want to export a code plug? Well, what does that mean? I think that's what I want to do, but am I sure? I don't know. So there are a few things that aren't intuitive, but I still think the software on this is a lot better than CPS. Not quite as good as BK's Res, but it's really good. The radio itself has some really nice features. I do like that all the buttons are easily distinguishable. You can cycle through menu features here. You have a second set of menu features here. You can program where all of these go. You can program what all the buttons do. But this is something I love. If you put a small screwdriver in there and you release this keeper, you can turn this into a continual channel selection switch. Now, I realize that there are many departments that like having a hard stop like a Motorola, where it physically stops at both ends. And they'll have maybe like an air guard channel on channel 16 or something like that. But I find that having a digital audio bonk where it stops at top and bottom is really nice. I personally like to program very large zones. I like to have, let's say I was going to program it for a GMRS radio and I wanted to pre-program in a bunch of tones, CT tones. I can have a bunch of different pre-programmed tones and then just cycle through, let's say channel 1, tone, whatever, all the way through, and then it'll switch to channel 2 and so on. I like having freedom. I really do. The other controls on this are pretty basic as well, and they're pretty common, excuse me. The BK and the VP8000 both have 4 pre-programmed zone selectors. The APX8000 and the APX Next only have 3 if you wanted to use these as a zone selector. The Kenwood VP8000 has a very nice emergency button. The BK is really firm. The Motorola non-XE version is kind of small, but still easy enough to push. But this, it's well protected, but really nice. The clear to encrypt switch on the 8000 is easy enough. I have actually cut my fingers on this edge on a few of them, and that's not my favorite thing to do. Kenwood, it's stiff, but you're not going to get hurt, and it's very clear which direction it is facing. BK, nice, clean, easy. You get a lot of real estate up here, and it's well used to display volume levels, battery level, channel, zone, time, everything like that. I really, really like the displays on this. I think that the Kenwood VP8000 is a beautifully designed display, and it uses the real estate really, really well. I know I say that a lot, but it's impressive. I like it. It is mildly larger than the APX8000, but smaller than the BKR 9000. I think the menus on this are slightly more confusing than the BKR 9000 and less confusing than the APX 8000. The BKR 9000 has just some amazing menu. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. It has some amazing menu interaction. I mean, look at this. It doesn't get much easier than that. It's all text-based, super, super easy, back and forth. This, it's good, but, okay, so you select Bluetooth. Well, which button do you push? Well, I've learned that you have to hit the menu again, okay? It's not enter. It doesn't come up here as a conversational interaction. The BKR 9000 is very conversational. The Kenwood relies a little bit more on training and a good understanding of how the radio works. Motorola has abbreviations that nobody understands unless you've been trained. Just like the BKR and the Motorola, it has 3 buttons plus a push to talk on the side. They are all programmable for whatever you want. Motorola is most restrictive. Kenwood seems to be pretty open. I really like that. Final thoughts. I think the Kenwood is an exceptional radio. In fact, aside from this like weird bulge thing that way and that way, it could be one of my favorite radios. But there is one glaring thing that makes me just not like it. And that is that the Kenwood VP8000 does not do non-affiliate scanning. And I say that with a little hesitation because I've read online that it can, but it does it in a similar way to the APX 8000 in that it is risky, and there's a strong likelihood that you're going to get your radio inhibited. It's not even as easy as the 8000 because you need to have a special system key that only Kenwood will release only to the specific system manager. And I think that's good. I think that there's a nice level of security. But when a scanner can do non-affiliate scanning, and when a BK can do non-affiliate scanning just like a scanner where there's zero risk, why can't a company like Kenwood do that also? It just doesn't make sense to me. Why are radio companies this against non-affiliate scanning? I mean, it just blows my mind. But anyways, if it weren't for non-affiliate scanning, this would likely be one of my favorite radios I've ever owned. That's all I've got for you today, guys. Take care, have fun, and be safe. We'll talk to you soon.